GBNews wants to take OFCOM to court for infringing what it calls its basic journalistic independence. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I'm afraid that Maya Tusi brands me as a liberal academic or an academic liberal, and I think he's quite entitled to do that. But despite that, I'm on the side of GBNews, absolutely, and opposed to the quango kowtowing to a hodgepodge of trendy opinions and obfuscation and control. The idea of non-bias, to start with, does not exist, and the idea of opinion should be encouraged whether you agree with it or not. And I think one of the reasons that we have such a dull and fractured media at the moment is because we don't have the thrill of challenging opinion and the license of challenging opinion. The Roger Scrutons and the Bernard Levins, squashed by woke anxiety. As for GBNews, which calls itself the People's Channel, this is a misnomer, this is an overstatement. It has failed to find its feet because it has launched itself in a sort of celebration of the ideas of only one aspect of a far right-wing ideology. It needs to be broader. It needs to, if it wants to be the voice of the people, it needs to be the voice of many people, and be prepared to have contradictions, rather than to have token lefties or liberal academics on the channel to be deflowered or silenced. It needs to have more, it needs to have a broader spread. There are people who are not on the far right in GBNews, but they aren't the ones who are making all the noise, sadly. But with this caveat, I don't think it means, even now, that it has broken the impartiality principles. Even broadcasting a program dedicated to and dominated by the Prime Minister, it's about the way bias is perceived and the way impartiality is understood. The current BBC interpretation of that is just an interpretation, and it's become a model of acquiescence. That must be wrong. And championing freedom, that's something that we should all agree. And we need to retrieve the great freedom of the press, which is essential. I fail to see how, for example, the Morning Star, which grew out of the 1930s Daily Worker, how that circumvents current OFCOM media mania, and it counts among its writers people like Jeremy Corbyn and Virginia Woolf, as well as George Galloway and Ken Livingstone and Caroline Lucas. Its field of writers is surprisingly wide for this communist voice. And that's on the other side. So what has OFCOM had to say about that? Because that must be biased, mustn't it? Oh, come on. The OFCOM thing is madness. It's a quango without teeth. And it's finally decided to pounce on GBNews. There's so many more things that it could do. It could start by addressing the problems of reality TV. But it doesn't want to because it's in the pocket of a particular faction in government. And when I look at the DCMS or the CMS or the Culture Secretary or whatever they're called now, Lucy Fraser. Is it Lucy Fraser? I don't know. She sounds like a Bond villain. These are people who are not only toothless but mindless. We need somebody with bite and persistence and imagination to guide our media forward, not to suppress it, but to lead it.